Hello, in this video let's explore the Dashbuilder components. One Dashbuilder application must contain at least one page, and pages are declared under the Pages section. So a page may have a name and also its components. If you are looking to change the layout of the page, you can make use of Dashbuilder grid system. In this system, a page can have rows and the rows can have columns. And inside the columns we have the components. Okay, about components. Let's talk about the most basic Dashbuilder component, which is the HTML. So the HTML component accepts a text that will be rendered as HTML, and to change the style of components you can declare properties of any component in the page, and the properties can be CSS2 properties that will be applied to the component. And not only the components can have properties, but also the rows and columns and the page itself can have CSS properties applied to it. To retrieve data, we make use of datasets, which are declared on its own section, the dataset section. And datasets can have the datasets content declared inline. This is mostly used for testing purpose. Or you can point the dataset to a URL, so it will be retrieve the data from that URL. Dashbuilder accepts CSV and JSON as the main formats for retrieving data. Then you can map the columns of the dataset using this section here, but you can continue your dashboard without declaring the columns. It's not required. If you don't declare the columns, then Dashbuilder will try to find the type for that column and also give it a generic ID. So once you have your data, to display the data, you will make use of displayers, and Dashbuilder has support to all traditional ways of displaying data. And internally, Dashbuilder currently uses the C3 library to render charts. So for example, we can have bar charts, line charts, area charts, pie charts, a meter chart where you can define values for the red and green and orange labels you see here. We have a word map where the Dashbuilder grabs the value of the column and treats it as a counter information, and then display information on the map according to that, to the second column, which contains the value for that country. And you can also customize the information that will be displayed on a displayer using the metric displayer. By default, when you declare using a metric component, you will have it rendered as a card with a title and the value, but you can also customize the HTML of that metric and also apply some JavaScript based on the value that is passed to the component. And finally, we have another built-in component, which are the selectors. And Dashbuilder has a feature that allows displayers to filter each other. So if you have two charts, you can click on one chart, it will filter other charts that are in the page. To do that, we just declare the chart with a filter section, and the filtering will be enabled. However, there are components that are specifically for filtering purpose. So the default selector is the drop-down. So if I select here this column, and remember, we are working with this data set where we have this section column, and we have two sections, computers and electronics. So if I go back to this selector and select the computer section, the chart here is filtered to show only computers. If I select electronics, then only electronics are displayed. And another way of selecting columns is using the labels selector. However, this will work only with label column types, and when you have it, the behavior is the same, just that the way that we show the data is now using these buttons. And finally, for date and number columns, we have this the slider, and it allows us to select filter the data set using a range of numbers or a range of dates. And in case that you either want to display your data in a different way, or if you want to use other chart library that are not available inside Dashbuilder, you can make use of external components. So for example, this chart here is not rendered inside Dashbuilder. It uses libraries that are not provided by Dashbuilder. In this case, we use eChart library, and it works with the datasets that you declared inside Dashbuilder. We also have other external component, which is the time series. It's also based on eCharts, and you can make use of it, but it's not a default component of Dashbuilder. Another very interesting component is the heat map, where you have a SVG, and you can provide to this component the SVG location and a dataset that will contain IDs for the SVG nodes and also a value, and then Dashbuilder, this component will render for that ID a heat based on the value. We also have other table to render the information. By default, if you don't declare the displayer type, it will use an internal table that I will show in a minute. But you can also make use of this rich table, and it is a external component. It has filtering on columns, it has paging and filter based on some value that you add here. And finally, we have a component that will not require the use of dataset, but it renders a form based on a JSON schema. Using this component, you can render form for your application. You just have to provide Dashbuilder with the JSON schema for the form creation and an URL, and then Dashbuilder will post data to that URL. And as you can see, this application that you see is built using Dashbuilder itself, and to do that, we make use of navigation components. Remember that in layout, we have a pages sections, which means that our application can have multiple pages. If you have more than one page, then Dashbuilder will build a menu for you. If you want to display the navigation in a different way, like I did here using tabs, then we can make use of navigation components. And I have been using tabs all the time, but we have also other ways to navigate between pages. One way is using tiles. So this is the tile component, where it displays the group, the navigation group in a card, and when you enter, you have the rendered page inside that same div, same part of the page. Another way to navigate between components is using the carousel. It's more useful if you want to display the page and permits a easy navigation between the pages. We also have this other menu and finally a tree navigation. And important to say that you can embed these navigation components in any part of your page. Okay, so you may be asking now, how do you get started with Dashbuilder? To do that, you can refer to your documentation, where you have a guide for all the components that I showed on that application. So you need to make use of an editor, and once your dashboard is ready, you can simply retrieve the Dashbuilder client bundle and provide your YML file with the bundle, and it will render a dashboard. So to finish, let's follow the guide with our editor. So we have this application here that contains a Dashbuilder editor. Let's create a new dashboard. So we'll try to do some live coding, so please bear with me. Let's try with a page. So at least one page is required on Dashbuilder application. So now we have an empty page. So let me declare HTML. So this is the simplest Dashbuilder application. You can also declare some CSS properties. Okay. So yeah, so as I said, if you want a more complex layout, you can make use of rows and columns. So let me copy this code here and paste here. Now we have a little more complex page. Let me show you. Okay. Yes. CSS properties are very flexible. So you can change about any aspect of the component using CSS properties. Now let's add some data sets. Well, let me copy this data set because I think it's easier to show. So now my dashboard has a data set. Let's try to explore things here. We have data set, but nothing happened on the view because we just declared a data set. Let's change here to have one component. And this component is a displayer, so displayer starts with a settings. So the default type is a table. And to tell the table what data set we want to use, we will use the section called data set lookup. And we can provide the ID of the data set, which is products. So it by default shows the information in a table. There are other aspects of any data set that you can explore, for example, aspects of the displayer that you can explore. For example, you can change the width, or you can make it resizable. As you can see, there are a lot of other things that you can change. You can, for example, format columns. So you see that the quantity has decimal place. Let's say you don't want that. So you can form the column here. Just declare these columns inside its player, declare a partner for it, so the decimal places are now gone. And for other kind of charts, we need to make a more complex configuration of the dataset lookup. So let me use here bar chart. It will not work by default because we need to provide the categories and the X and Y, the Y column. So you need to group the information to show it. So let's declare here this column group. The source for the column group, let's say that we want to sum the quantity by section. So let's make the source the section. And now for the group, we need to provide the functions that will perform some operation over the columns of this grouping. So first let's return the category itself, and then let's return the column that we want the group to be done, and then we have the bar chart. We can, for example, change the function to sum, to max. See here the value is changing, to minimum, or to average. You can also add more columns if you want. Now we have 2 columns. Change here to sum. Yeah. Okay, and you can try any kind of chart you want here. If the lookup is compatible, just change the type and it will change the visualization. So yeah, this is about the internal components, and as I said, you can have also external components. So let me do this again and just remove this, and the table is back. Now I can, for example, use a component, choose the table. To configure external components, we use another section. So here we have the same data displayed with other components. And so that's it for the basics. There are a lot of things to explore. Check our documentation, and if you have any question, use our community links to let us know. Thank you for watching.